Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Gilbert Savala. I'm Vice President of Education and Talent Development at the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce. In my role, I oversee our school district and higher education partnerships on education attainment and talent development strategies across Central Texas. I will be moderating our conversation today, and we are live taking your Q&A. But as we're progressing through the webinar, I want to ask you all to please use the Q&A feature on your screen and not the chat box tool. This way we'll be able to capture your questions and make sure the panel addresses them. But before I begin and introduce our panelists, I'd like to acknowledge that this is an uncertain time. It's an uncertain time for our students. It's an uncertain time for our schools. It's an uncertain time for our colleges, our businesses, and our community, as we've all been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the challenge is that COVID has impacted not just the health of our community and our families, but the health of our economy. Nationally, over 20 million Americans have filed unemployment claims across the country, and 2 million of these come from Texas. Regionally, we've seen roughly 40,000 unemployed in Central Texas alone. Many of these families have students in our schools, have graduating seniors who are questioning their college plans. Conversely, we have about 64,000 job openings as of this past month. And our challenge is that many of our unemployed lack the skills to compete for these open jobs. And while we've made progress on direct-to-college enrollment from our high schools to our colleges, we're still behind the national average. So COVID's impact on our economy makes it more important than ever to develop and hone our homegrown talent. This means connecting students with educational opportunities beyond high school that will help develop their skills, the skills they need to compete for jobs, to help their families prosper, and to help our economy recover. As counselors, you play a vital role in these efforts, and we're pleased to support your work and welcome our panelists to equip you with the latest information to help you advise our students. So we're pleased today to have our friends and partners from Austin Community College, Texas State, the University of Texas at Austin, my alma mater, A&M, joining us today to answer your questions. I'll introduce our panelists. Joining us from Austin Community College is Dr. Melissa Curtis, Associate Vice President of Enrollment Management, where she leads recruitment, admissions, financial aid, student services, and graduation office support to increase enrollment, persistence, and graduation for Austin Community College. Dr. Curtis serves on our DTC 70 executive and program task forces. She partners annually in our Financial Aid Saturdays program and our Summer Melt Transition program to help students move from K-12 to higher ed. She also holds leadership positions at E3 Alliance's Austin College Access Network and Austin's Opportunity Youth Collaborative. She's held several positions at ACC, including Dean of Students, Director of College Connections, and Faculty Professional Development Coordinator. Dr. Curtis is a graduate of the Community College Leadership Program at the University of Texas at Austin. She earned a master's degree at Texas State and a bachelor's from Vassar. Joining us from Texas State is Annie Judkins. Annie is Senior Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Texas State University, where she served in this position for over a decade. She's active in the Texas Association of College Access Counselors. She's active in the National Association of College Admissions Advisors and Counselors. And she's also active in the Texas Association of College Registrars and Admission Officers, where she serves on several committees. Annie has a BS in Deaf Education and a master's degree in counseling from the University of Tulsa. As a first-generation college student, Annie, like many of our panelists, is passionate about supporting students on their higher education journey. Joining us from the University of Texas at Austin is Dr. Miguel Vasilevsky. Miguel is the Executive Director of Admissions at the University of Texas at Austin. He joined the admissions office back in 2015 after spending 20 years in the UT Office of Financial Aid, and prior to his role as director, he led a holistic review of UT's application process and prospective student recruitment. Miguel is a first-generation college student who grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. And fun fact, I also grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. I did not graduate, however, like Miguel, from San Benito High School. I graduated from McAllen High School. Miguel came to the University of Texas as a freshman. He earned his 3 degrees from the University of Texas and has spent his career serving the university. Another fun fact, he beat me by 1 degree. I only have 2 from UT. Joining us from A&M is David Schwartz, and David is the Senior Regional Admissions and Financial Aid Advisor for Texas A&M University in Central Texas. David opened the Texas A&M University Prospective Student Service Center here in Austin back in 2006, and he served on numerous chamber task forces to support college readiness and attainment in our region. Prior to joining A&M, David was the Director of Career Resources at St. Edward's University, also worked in financial aid at the University of Texas at Austin. David and his team partner annually on our Financial Aid Saturdays program, and they've done this for over a decade. We were pleased to honor and recognize David's commitment as a college access champion for Central Texas at our State of Education event back in 2017. David now represents A&M across Central Texas, where he and his team advise students, parents on college choice, selection of academic majors, admissions, financial aid at Texas A&M University. Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to, before we get into the questions, just turn it over to you in case there's anything I didn't cover that you'd like to say on behalf of your institutions. Hearing no additional comments, we'll proceed directly to our questions. So I want you to know that some questions were submitted to us in advance, and as we're moving through the responses here, and if you hear something or topic or issue that you'd like to ask a question about, please do type it in our Q&A box so that our panelists are able to address it. So our first question ties directly to the COVID crisis. And looking at the national college admissions landscape in this crisis, one thing is certain, and that is that nothing is certain. We've seen colleges take different approaches to their admission processes. Some have extended application periods, some have not. Some have changed admissions requirements, some have not. Some have extended decision deadlines, and some have not. For each of your institutions, can you walk us through your process and how COVID has impacted your usual admissions, protocols, requirements, and what counselors and advisors should know about any new protocols that you are adopting as they're advising students? We'll start with Melissa at Austin Community College.
Okay, so the question is about admissions and what counselors should know with advising students toward the admissions process, correct?
Correct.
Yay, I got it. All right. And yes, I will take a moment to say on behalf of Austin Community College, I'm very glad to be here speaking with all of you about enrollment into college. As Gilbert said, this is a real uncertain time. And from the community college's vantage point, it's going to be really interesting to us because we know that typically community colleges are inverse to the economy in terms of our enrollment. And that means that at Austin Community College, some of our highest enrollment over the last 20 years happened in 2008 during the last recession. That is because so many students are making choices to attend college instead of going directly into the workforce because there may be fewer options, or they may need to be, if they're adult students who've been out in the workforce, they may be needing to come back and retool or reskill because the landscape has changed in terms of their skill sets. So we're watching this carefully from our perspective because this is a very different type of environment than a recession would ordinarily bring. In terms of, I see Christina's question about announcing the format plan for fall 2020. We're still making decisions around that, and there is still a lot of unknown about what the fall will look like. What I can tell you is that for Austin Community College, we have pushed back our registration times for our fall registration. We did the same for summer. Summer is ongoing now for all students, and that term will begin on June 1st. And for fall, we pushed it back so that any returning students, and these would be your dual credit students who've already enrolled with ACC before, they will be registering on June 8th, and then any new students will be registering on June 15th. So this is a really good time for students, if they haven't already, to be submitting their applications, completing their applications, going through any advising that they need. And all of those steps in terms of enrollment to ACC have not changed. However, the differences are that in communicating with our staff, all of the communication and support services are now available remotely. And we've done a really good job of moving all of our staff into a remote environment. They can make calls out, they can receive calls in, they're emailing, they're making appointments, and everything that would have been done on a campus can now be done in a virtual environment. The other piece that's really of interest, I believe, to all of us are the TSI transformations and options. Right now, because of the testing needing to all be remote, it's slower, and getting TSI scores is slower. And this is holding up some students in terms of their access through the admissions process. ACC is really close. I would have liked to have announced it today, but we're still just ironing out a couple of small details, really close to announcing our holistic advising review. And I can share with you that it will include looking at GPAs from high school transcripts and potentially how much math or English the student has completed within the high school to know if we're going to consider them TSI complete for all of their courses or some of their courses and push them through so that they can register. Before fall registration begins, we will have answers on that. So it's a very different time. There's a lot of uncertainty, and yet at the same time, we are business as usual. We're just business as usual from our homes. And in that way, we will continue to serve and be available to the students. The difference also, of course, for students is around their own digital divide, if they have access to what they need in order to reach out to us, if they have the availability. And ACC is providing some of those options for students once they enroll. But in terms of the application process, it's business as usual. Any other questions about that? I'm looking at, hold on, see if there's. For us, SAT and ACT scores are the same. If a student has SAT scores and ACT scores and wants to submit them, then we will use those in place of TSI. I know that those tests were still being offered online. Perhaps fewer students took them, but they are still available. And do you want me, Gilbert, to go ahead and answer some of these questions here from my perspective, or would you like me to turn it over to the other panelists to respond to your question?
Let's go through for everybody initially on the first question, and then we're going to circle back because we've got questions coming in and then the questions that were submitted. So we're going to try to answer as many as we can. But yeah, let's transition to the other colleges and have everybody respond on behalf of their institution.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
I am up next.
You are. So it's the same question. You want me to repeat?
Nope, I've got it. So greetings from New Braunfels, which is where I'm working remotely. We are all off campus, working remotely across everywhere. And like Melissa said, we are doing Zoom visits and we are doing Zoom chats with whole classrooms and different groups. So a lot of things are happening. We're doing phone calls and emails. All those virtual things that are happening is just not seeing people in person. So we are still going on and admitting students, and life continues to be crazy busy as usual for us at Texas State. Yes, a lot of things were changed for us regarding this fall semester. We are still admitting students and accepting applications through the end of July. So that's a longer time out for us. That goes the same for transfer students as well. So applications are still coming in. We're still reviewing them and looking at those to try to make decisions on those students. A big question, of course, is like, what about the test and the test scores? We do have a lot of students that were anticipating retesting, and so they were looking forward to testing again in February, whichever. So those students, as well as students with no test scores, we are reviewing those students anyway. So, and that's where, for you, that the transcript comes in and becomes most important at that point. Things that we look at, their GPA in their classes and things what they've taken. So all those things, like all of us, that's what becomes the most important thing that we're looking at, is what have they taken in high school, what are they doing? So, and we continue to make those decisions and push those out on almost a daily basis as we're reviewing those apps. What else did we do this time? So we do review every student as usual that's in the top 75 percentile of their class, so that did not change. But what also changed besides the test score is that we did broaden our fee waiver process. So as you know, ours has been more restrictive than a lot of places, so we did open it. We increased the EFC to $5,000 from $2,500 or $3,000. We also started taking the SAT, ACT, and NACAC fee waivers. So those have all been coming through. We were able to complete a lot of applications based on information we had for that. So that has been a big change for us this spring, especially as we're still reviewing all those students and looking at trying to find documentation in their files. Yes, we literally went through all the files to look for fee waiver applications that were there for incomplete applications, and we applied those when we found them. So that was a big issue for our processing office. AP has been a question that I've heard out there as well, and IB, we're accepting those as usual. There's been no change for us for those. Those are still fine for us as well. So going forward, what are we gonna do for next fall? Well, I'm sure as everyone else, we're still figuring that out. So many questions are unanswered for us as we look ahead. But currently I've been allowed to let you know what we've proposed to administration, but has not been approved. So don't take this to the bank quite yet, but this is what we've asked for, is for all these things that we have implemented right now, continue for fall 21. So that would be accepting the fee waivers. That would be reviewing students that don't meet assured admission without test scores. So all of those things that we have done for this spring semester, to continue that for the fall. So don't broadcast that widely quite yet, other than the 102 of you that are there. but we are trying to get that approved by administration to move forward. So we proposed that, and we're just still looking forward to that. One thing I can say is, overseeing the review committee at Texas State, that I'm delighted about that. It's a good news, bad news thing for our students, because I love looking at high school transcripts, and the grades and courses are just going to become more important now than they have been perhaps in the past. So that test score sometimes balance the student. Now it's going to be all going toward that transcript. So we'll see how this falls out.
Thank you, Annie. Miguel?
All right, I think I'm up next from University of Texas at Austin. Again, Miguel Vasilevsky, Executive Director of Admissions. So first of all, I want to say thank you to the Austin Chamber of Commerce for having this opportunity. And thank you to everybody who's attending today, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some good information. Just to give a quick summary of where we are so far and what the decisions we've made. Obviously, you know, COVID hit everybody by surprise, and our first initial effort was to make sure that all of our resources, as much as possible, were made available to students in a virtual sense. Our tours have been transferred to online virtual presentations. We have our tour guides giving presentations online. And we have a number of recruitment and outreach efforts that are still continuing to happen in the communities, and in larger events. And we have a number of things planned throughout the entire summer. The second thing is really thinking about making sure that everything that we did was reflecting having some ability to analyze spring in a different way. One of the first questions we got from high school counselors and from students is, how does everything that's being changed for the spring impact us? And our guiding philosophy is that we don't want anything COVID related to negatively affect the student in any way. So we're being as lenient as possible in analyzing any of those transcripts, and we're set up to do holistic review and professional judgment. So we will continue that in a way that really analyzes the student's performance in that context of what's happening today. And then the third thing is really looking at our standard requirements for admissions, things like enrollment deposit deadlines and requirements to apply for admissions. And I think that for now, we stayed the course on where we're going with May 1st as our enrollment deposit deadline. We currently are still requiring standardized scores as part of our application process. But the thing that we definitely brought into this whole process is the idea that we wanted students to have the flexibility to be able to reach out to us if there was special circumstances. So for example, if a student had issues meeting that May 1st enrollment deposit deadline, students could report that to us, and we would analyze each one of those situations, and really about providing that personalized guidance to students to be able to help them get through whatever issues they're going through that are preventing them from being able to make that decision. As far as the standardized scores, there's a lot of information that we're still looking at. It's really important for us to make decisions based upon research, analysis, facts. And so for us, we really wanted to take a look at all of the information that's out there. We have told students that we would let them know about any changes to the admissions requirements prior to the August 1st opening of the application. And so we would get that information out pretty much as quickly as possible. And we're still analyzing everything for this coming fall. Our president of the university released a message saying that our expectation is to be in person this coming fall, but if there's any changes to that, we would be communicating that before the end of June. So that's my brief summary for now.
Thank you, Miguel. Let's transition to David. And David, I think you're muted.
I'm ready.
So we're doing the same question. You want me to repeat? So the question is, how has COVID impacted the usual admissions process requirements for your institution, and what should counselors know about any new protocols as they're advising students about Texas A&M?
First off, I'm going to say, can you all hear me? Okay, good. It's really amazing. I've never seen things happen so quickly on a college campus as when this situation arose. Things have been flying all over the place to be put into shape to get this situation under control, where there was basically really no way we knew what the control would be. And so we did the typical things that everybody did. Everything is online now. All of those kinds of things, just like the folks that you've been giving the information before me. We are working in some variants on all of those issues, and they're all the same. And most of the schools are going to have these questions. As far as our program, not much is going to be changing on the admissions part of it. In fact, probably the largest change has come before the COVID came, and that was taking away the automatic admissions that was geared toward class rank and SAT, ACT scores. From now on, all of our students that are not top 10 automatic admits will be reviewed, and all of our students will come out of the review process. So this is a process that was in change and in the process up until way before COVID started. Some things we can't it's kind of funny because some things I don't know about, not even sure I want to know about them. Some things I can't tell you about, even though I might be just screaming to tell you. I've been hush-hushed about certain facts and things about the university, and I have to honor those things. I will tell you, if there are any changes in our application dates, those are things that require that they are approved through the university. And so they may be happening, but until they happen, I'm not going to tell you whether they are or they are not. Until those things are approved, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. At the university, of course, it's kind of quiet there now, but people believe just because we sent students back home that the university is not functioning. Well, it is, because we have a number of students that their home is the university campus. So we still have to have a medical center. We still have to have food services. We still have to have a police department. So all of those things are still up and running. And people want to know when we're going to come back on campus. And I will tell you that we are starting that process at this point right now. What details are of that, I'm not allowed to give you the data information. But at the current time, we are not allowed to do person-to-person type contact programs through the university, and that has been extended out until July 31. So August 1 is the kind of date that we're looking for things to reach some kind of normalcy. Fingers crossed, toes are crossed even on this one. We are going to do some things. This is the first year that we are going to offer our freshman summer classes. Ideally, notice I said ideally, that letter went out to all of our students on the mail yesterday. It should be in their hands today. So there are about 30 courses that students will be able to enroll in online for freshman students, just freshman students. And so it's a new program we're trying out and seeing how that works. It's been, from everybody that has talked about it, it seems it's a very popular idea. It gives the students a little bit of a heads up what college is like before they actually step onto the campus. I saw him mention about the shots for the meningitis. They're required. We can't stop them, but for this year, the meningitis vaccinations will be able to be, they've got until they get on campus to have those things done. Usually we like to have them done before they go to their orientation program. Orientation is all going to be online. Never done that before. Never thought about doing that before, but we do now. And we actually will be starting this week on our first orientation programs at the university. So you can see things are popping, even though there may not be a whole lot of people walking across the campus. We've got a lot of these things that we're putting in. We are under the thought process that we're hoping that there will be some kind of cure for this situation, and by next year we will be back and doing things as regular. I do know that there may be some changes in how classes are done in the fall, but all of this is kind of on a let's wait and see what is going on. And for a university the size of Texas A&M University, usually they can't stop on a dime and make a turn, but this is one of those instances where we have done that to the nth degree. And everything I think is going to be very, very helpful for the students. Other questions about advanced placement, still going to do that. The one program from the coordinating board, I don't know what to tell you about that test. We don't have an answer for you on it. We're going to hold on. We've had no guidance from the coordinating board on what the student's going to have to do, whether they're going to have to put off registration for a semester, whether they're going to have the test. I don't know. In fact, I don't know is my catchphrase for a lot of stuff at Texas A&M. Of course, I also use my Zen and I say, well, we'll see. Those are my two favorite things to say on the Texas A&M campus. But all in all, it's looking like that things are starting to fall into place and we will be ready to go. Another question that came up, are we going to stop the ACT, SAT tests? No, not on your life. They're going to stay. Most of our programs and services are going to stay unless we actually have to make some way to make it more amenable to get more students access to the university. So if you have students with questions or parents with questions, funnel them to our advisors here in the Central Texas area. You're more than welcome to contact me if you have questions. I know I've worked probably with many of you for many years, and I really value your professionalism and your ability to go with the flow like everybody else. So just let me know what we can do, and we'll go from there.
David, thank you. Hey, one quick clarification that
Surely.
it's relevant to this question. On summer classes, are you talking about virtual classes, or are you all welcoming students on?
No, they will be virtual.
Virtual. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just to clarify.
Yeah. And probably nothing will. I don't think there'll be any person-to-person classes until we get into August. That's kind of the August 1 is kind of the wait and see date. And from there, then we'll be able to ideally make some decisions.
Thank you. So our next question turns to COVID's impact on the economy and students' capacity to finance their enrollment. So many families with graduating seniors may be experiencing unemployment or changes to their income impacting their ability to pay. I want to start back with Melissa and ask, what advice would you give to counselors and college access advisors to support students who are facing financial challenges? And can you talk a little bit about some of the tools that might be available to students? For example, tuition payment plans, CARES Act, emergency funding, professional judgment that was mentioned by a few of you all, and other options.
Yes, thank you, Gilbert. I believe you actually hit a lot of the options that we have available for students in need of more financial support than usual. As a reminder, Austin Community College is an incredible value for the dollar. We are a low-cost institution and still provide transferable and workforce education with our courses transferring to our partners here. So for some families at this time, we know that they are choosing not to plan for their children to go away in the fall because they might prefer for them to stay local. And if that's the case, and if they're choosing Austin Community College, we are lower cost, so this is a way to make it through that. And we will transfer to their universities in almost every case. And so, you know, that is something that is of a benefit that Austin Community College provides. We do also provide credentials that can get people right to work. If the, you know, transfer programs can take longer, and they're incredibly meaningful and useful. However, if you want to get in and get out with something that will help you to begin to earn money for your family should you be in a financial concern, many of our programs are designed for that very thing. We really are putting a huge push on financial aid applications at this time. Typically in our region, we do not have a large number of FAFSA completers for the percentage of our population. We're at about 36% once you filter out the high school students who actually are receiving aid at Austin Community College, because a lot of times students and families don't apply. And, you know, with all of our FAFSA Saturdays and all of our work around that, we're still going to be doing even more. We have the CARES Act student emergency funding for students who are enrolled at Austin Community College. So right now it's intersession. We've currently stopped our application receipt, and we will be starting it back up again at the start of summer. Should a student be in a circumstance where they have a COVID-19 financial challenge to their education, and that could mean learning materials, that could also mean that they can't pay rent, it could mean that they need health insurance, especially if they're going into an educational program that requires it. They may need a special kind of laptop for a graphics design degree. You know, any of these possibilities, childcare, what have you. We do encourage students to submit for the CARES Act Student Fund. We have one simple application on our website that they can submit for. And again, we're not actually really publishing this, kind of taking a page from Anna's book, but I will share that pretty much if they're asking up to $1,200, we're going to give it without a whole bunch of documentation requirements or asks. Many students ask for what they need. That's oftentimes less than $1,200. Many students need more. If they need more and they're applying for more than that, we might go ahead and grant them out a certain amount and then push their application for further review among our support advocates to help them also access additional resources within the community. But we do have those funds available to us from the federal government. We're working on saving some for fall. We've currently expended about half of what we have had, and we may wind up running out of them for summer, but we really are hoping to schedule them for fall as well. The other financial piece is the tuition payments and the payment plans that we have. And we've always had these in place for students. So if they go ahead and register for their courses and pay a third of their tuition up front, then it's going to stagger a third and a third throughout the rest of the term. So they do not have to be responsible for the full amount of their tuition up front upon registration. We know that this is a tough time financially, and we are really looking for options and solutions for our students. ACC has also just started our Career Scholars programs, and a number of your students have applied for Career Scholars scholarships, and that could provide up to 2 years of tuition and fees for their education. And we're currently reviewing those applications at this time. So I don't want students to lose heart or be concerned that they don't have options because of the cost of college. Gilbert also mentioned, review. And for many students, if they've applied for FAFSA using their parents' tax returns from the previous years, and they now are in different circumstances, we want them to let our financial aid team know about that so that then they can go ahead and do a special conditions and get reviewed again for their financial aid. And for us, anything really financial aid related, you just email FINAID, FINAID, at austincc.edu, and you will get immediately to a financial aid assistant to help you with this. And all of our forms can be submitted online as well. So please don't let that keep your students from applying. We've also always had open educational resources or the textbook programs where you pay for them upfront. We call it first day access or inclusive access. And so then you wind up getting a big discount on what your textbooks might be. So there's a lot of solutions for students who may be feeling concerned about finances at this time.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, I'm muted. I was going to transition to Annie, and Annie, we're still on that same question related to financial impact and resources that might be available at Texas State to help families facing those circumstances.
Much like ACC, Texas State has always had a lot of options in place for our students. So tuition payment plans have always been there for our students. Where basically tuition gets divided up into 3 payments. There is what we call an emergency plan for students who are coming in that can't afford that first payment, and it can be deferred to a later time that semester. So that's available for them, and that has always been available. So that's helpful for them. The CARES Act, again, is for our current students that are on campus. So we've got a lot of students who are definitely taking advantage of that right now as they're going forward. And also a lot of, since we're doing the prior FAFSA, we're, so many things change in our students' circumstances. Even if it wouldn't be COVID, there's other things that happen in students' lives that would cause the circumstances to change financially. So we encourage our students to reach out to financial aid, to talk with them, let them know what their extenuating circumstances are, provide documentation, what are the circumstances, what's changed, so they will know how to help them. So reaching out to financial aid, of course, is always the first thing that they should do. We also, this year, in the spring, April, I think, changed our Bobcat Promise. So we have finally increased that to $50,000 for a student that their adjusted gross income is $50,000 or less, they get the Bobcat Promise. So that affected a lot of our students, and we were given notification that that is going to carry forward in the future. So we're going to be able to keep that program up for our students. The key there for your students who are applying for next year is that they should have their FAFSA in, and they should have their application completed and be admitted by March 15th. So there is that March 15th deadline that your students need to be aware of to have FAFSA in and to be admitted already. So that becomes an important part of that. One thing about Bobcat Promise that's a little bit different than others is that that is available for all of our admitted students. So it doesn't depend on a rank or a test score or any of those things. It is just your adjusted gross income. If it's $50,000 or below, you're eligible for Bobcat Promise. So a lot of those things that are still happening and changing and going on are always happening. I was real proud of our Alumni Association. They created a Bobcat Cares website for Bobcats or Bobcat to Bobcat to be able to help current students. And so they've been donating thousands of dollars to be able to help current students, which has been a really neat thing. And I assume that that will continue in the future, helping our students, as we've talked, that are now off campus, that most of them did have to leave, but we do still have some on campus still. We have some of our foster care people that were in foster care, they are still on campus. International students, they are all still on campus, so we're helping them and giving them funding as well. So a lot of different opportunities available for them financially. Already, Texas State has most of our students on some kind of financial aid, so that will continue on in the future.
Thank you, Annie. We'll transition to Miguel, and we're still on the financial impact and financial resources question.
Sure. And this is a question that we often get a lot, and throughout my career in financial aid, it's one I addressed many times. And I think sort of one of the fundamental components, no matter if it's COVID or not, is that if you ever feel like there's something different about your financial situation, if things have changed, if things just don't look right, it's really important to reach out to your financial aid office and let them know that something has changed. Every institution is going to have some process by which they will use professional judgment to evaluate your circumstances. Our expectation is, because of the economy right now, because of what's going on, that number will actually increase, and we'll see a need for students to be evaluated on a much more rapid time frame as well. So each institution is preparing for that. We definitely have made some modifications to our system to where now you can e-sign any of those documents when you're submitting them to the office, because we know that sometimes having a printer at home is not something everybody has. So we have that process in place, and we will have folks at UT sit down, look at your situation, and then work with you to see what makes sense and what's within the guidelines of what we can actually do. We have the CARES Act like other institutions. We're using that for our currently enrolled students. There's a number of support mechanisms that exist at UT Austin for financial aid. We have the Texas Advanced Commitment. We have the new Dell Scholars Program that's in there. And past that, we have Student Emergency Services that provides resources to students in these sorts of situations. And really, it's a whole institutional response to making sure that the well-being of the students is looked after. So we're pretty excited about how UT has responded to things. We know that they're working very hard to make sure that students are taken care of, and we'll definitely be continuing that along. But I think the big takeaway, and I agree with my previous colleagues on everything they said, and I don't want to be repetitious about it, but I do think that definitely you should never feel as if you can't reach out to your financial aid office. They are always there to help out with anything that just seems a little odd with your financial situation.
Thank you, Miguel. David, same question on financial impact for families, financial aid resources available at Texas A&M during the crisis.
I think that the folks that have gone before me have done an extraordinary job of covering the territory. A few little tweaks. Maybe I did mention that we were going to have the summer programs available to freshmen for the first time. Financial aid will be available for those students, but they need to finish the FAFSA for this current academic year. Because of the way that our school runs, summer is part of the previous academic year. So they need to file a 2018-2019. Anyway, you know what I mean.
We do.
Thing that's a little bit different. You know, everybody else is covered things that the only thing that I would really like to reinforce is Miguel. His information is dead spot on. It's the information from the financial aid office that is important. They are there to help the students. No matter what the student is, a person walking in off the street that something has happened, if it's going to impact them in any way financially, they need to be in front of their financial aid advisor about it. That's the hardest thing, I think, for most of my students and parents is to ask. I have so many parents that say, oh, I make too much money, I'm not going to fill out a FAFSA. Well, gosh darn it, after this, if they're not willing to fill out the FAFSA, I don't know what will shake them, because this is going to make some real differences. And I will tell you that we look at all of our programs, scholarships and funds, and how all of it's structured. We go through this on a regular basis. You know, there will be some small changes in programs and things like that. The Aggie Assurance program is almost identical to programs at Southwest Texas and at the University of Texas. So these things are for the students that are outside of the box, the ones that make, I don't want to say middle income, because I don't know if we have middle income anymore. So that's the last political thing I'll say for the day. But but we can help, but we can't help unless you come in and tell us what your needs are. So the big thing we get at this point in time is upgrading the needs based on students that don't have computers. You'd be surprised how many of the students that I deal with do not have the computer. They're going to go to UT or A&M where they're going to need as good a computer as they can get for the rigors of the academics. And it's same for the other schools. There will be computers available, but some of these kids need those things for themselves, and we raise that on a regular basis. Another thing that's happened in the past, and I don't know if people really understand how far as financial aid offices go, but we have even increased budgets over the past for a student for a new suit of clothes, so that they could go and get reviewed by the employers that come on campus in interviews, because they don't have a suit coat, they don't have a tie, they don't have a button-down collar. And so there's always a thing on our screen that says, ask admissions, ask financial aid. Well, if you have a question, that's what it's there for, ask. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. That's what the whole process of education is all about to begin with. So I'm going to leave it at that because I think the other 2-3 people have done an excellent job of laying the landscape of what financial aid is right now.
Thank you, David. So I'm seeing, just because it's germane, again, I'm seeing on this topic a couple of questions related to work study funding and maybe the release of funds, potential release of funds early on. David, you touched on your summer school component, but given the fact that there is uncertainty about when campuses are going to reopen up, I'd love it if the other panelists could also weigh in on work study and how that's going to be different for your institutions, just because many of our students seek to actually work and go to school at the same time. So can we address that and also the timing of the release and go back? We'll go back in order and transition to Melissa and then come back.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. Our release timing will be the same. We are not planning on doing much different related to when we are releasing and distributing the financial aid to students. They should be able to look at their package and accept their package and know what is coming to them in their self-service portal. But it won't be getting released just because of distribution and the way that our tuition schedules go and all of that kind of thing. For work study, ACC may be doing something different than what the other institutions on this panel are doing. We actually have made the choice not to do work study in the fall and the spring for 20 and 2021. And the reason for that is that we don't know if we will have on-campus jobs available for the students. And so what we can do and are allowed to do in our Title IV funding is take that work study funding and roll it into additional packaging so that then we can use it to support students actually by providing them funding directly without tying it to the work component. And that felt like, to us, the most secure way to provide additional funding to students, especially when there is no guarantee that they will be on campus to be doing some of that work. So that's the way that we've handled it on that. And if I could go back to one other thing that was mentioned relating to the FAFSA completion, this is important that I think David and the others touched on. The federal funding that we are receiving for CARES Act funding does require students to be Title IV eligible. Doesn't mean they have to be receiving the funding, but they have to be Title IV eligible. So watch the words that I choose and not necessarily use judgment words here. Our undocumented students, for example, are not eligible to receive these funds. So what we are encouraging students to do is to go ahead and submit the FAFSA, even if they are not going to be eligible to receive that funding, because for those that are, that then provides the additional federal funding that they didn't know they might get. And it also puts them in the pool for the CARES Act student aid. And then for those that they know they are not, say, for example, because of their residency status or what have you, we have still the TASFA, and we do still have our state funding that we can award there. And so by having more of the students who are eligible for the federal funding taking that, then we're able to reserve the state funding for some of our undocumented students. So I just wanted to put that one out there because David sowed that seed. So, but that's the response that I have at this time.
Thank you, Melissa. Annie, any input on the same topic?
Regarding work study, I have not heard that anything at all has changed for us. We rely so heavily on our work study students. We do expect to be back on campus starting with summer 2 in July. So we actually are supposed to still come back. That's only a month and a half away. So we're still planning to be there. So we're still expecting all of our students to be working with us.
Miguel?
Yeah, just a quick thought from UT Austin. I mean, we definitely will have the work study awarded on the file. I mean, clearly, if there's some change to our expectations for the fall and classes happen either partially online, partially in person, then we will work with students to think about how telework might be possible. So there's a number of options we'll consider with that, but for now we're awarding our work study, and then we'll manage that as we go along for the fall.
Thank you. David? Same question along work study. And you're muted.
No, I'm not. This is one of those areas that I have not heard talk about. It's not that there's not anything being done. It's not that nobody's looking at it. But because I'm now in the admissions office, I don't get all the information that comes out of the financial aid office. Have they thought about it? I guarantee you that they have. Will we have it? If it's a feasible option, we will have it. How will it be dispersed? The students will have to tell us that they want to do the college work study program. But I cannot, there's no way in the world that we would let those dollars go away, because the university would fall apart. A big university, it relies on its college work study students, and we'll go down fighting on this one. We'll keep it as long as we can.
Thank you, David. So I want to turn now to something Melissa mentioned and that many students might be thinking about, and that is if your four-year plans have been impacted and you are reconsidering going off to college either out of state or out of area. Many students might be considering two-year transfers at ACC, other community colleges around the state. And as you know, transfer students often take courses that maybe don't align with their majors or prospective majors. So I want to ask you all to chime in and provide any guidance you think that counselors should be giving to students reconsidering their four-year commitments and wanting to start off at a community college to do a transfer to your institution. So with that, I'll start with Melissa, because many students transfer from ACC, and we'll go in order from there.
So of course, we will be a home for and a safe haven and secure and welcoming place for students that had an intent to go elsewhere, and for some of these reasons are making that decision not to at this time. This is something we see every year and is a part of the summer MELT decision making that students engage in if they're making decisions about, you know, going elsewhere. And then during the summer, rather than not going at all, they will engage with ACC. So we're accustomed to this. And of course, we will be available for the students. We know that our courses transfer outside of ACC to all of your institutions. We always encourage, if they're planning to transfer, to first also have that conversation with the institution that they'll be transferring to. And then at that point, something that they need to keep in mind is with financial aid, if they are enrolling in courses at ACC that are not a part of the ACC curriculum or program, they may not necessarily be getting the financial aid for them because they're not a part of our program. So we always have to have those conversations. But of course, we welcome them and we welcome their successful transfer as well. So they don't have to worry about a hard sell from us. Please don't go. You know, we know that people have goals and dreams and are moving to, you know, whatever their end goal is. And that's part of our job, is to begin with the end in mind with our students. And so if they're just upfront, I'm here for this term because I couldn't get to wherever they were planning on getting to, just let them be upfront about that, and we will help them get to that next space. We've got a very robust transfer center and career center to work with students, and all of our advisors are accustomed to those conversations.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's go to Annie, and same question on transfers for Texas State.
So Texas State has always been a transfer-friendly institution. We get so many transfers from both Alamo colleges and ACC, and we have counselors dedicated just to those campuses. But right now, we're pleased to see that our Texans are coming home. So we're getting a lot of contacts right now from students that are from Texas that have gone out of state to school, and now they want to be closer. Or maybe mom and dad want them to be closer, but either way, they're saying, I want to be closer to home. So we're seeing a lot of applications right now from those students coming back home. And in general, most of those classes even transfer in from out of state. Of course, your students are welcome to start at ACC. We get so many that do, or CTC, any of the surrounding institutions. Couple of things I would say for those students going from high school into community college. No, we didn't know what we wanted to do when we were 18. Yeah. And we go into college and we change our majors. But there are some students that they do know what they want to do. And so if that's the case, we would highly recommend they contact their counselor from that institution to see what is the degree plan. Because there are some classes that you can take as core that will go toward your major. And if you don't have that one, you're still going to have to take it once you get there. So you can kind of, we say, double dip and doing both at the same time. Some majors like business for us, it requires a philosophy course, you know, so you can take that one at ACC. If you don't, you're going to have to take it when you get here for us. But that's a good thing just to know that you're going to need that. So those are pretty easy tweaks to deal with. My bigger concern sometimes is with students that are coming in for those select programs that are sequential and require 8 semesters. For us, interior design is one of those. So you could have finished an associate's degree at any community college like ACC, and when you come into interior design, you have 8 semesters to complete. So it's just their accreditation requires that. So they've got those sequential semesters that happen. Sound recording technology is that way. So there's some that are very specifically sequenced that we would have your students therefore reach out to the college they want to transfer to, or they're even thinking about transfer to see, is there anything specific I should know? Because there's a few of those, and some are not as transfer friendly as others are. Some are very easy to transfer into, and some are a little bit more difficult. So for us, if you want to do musical theater, that's not going to happen as a transfer. You've got to come in as a freshman. So there's not many like that, but there are a few. So have your high school students reach out to us as counselors first before they come in.
Thank you, Annie. Same question for transfers coming to UT.
Sure. So the transfer process, the admissions process for transfer students is quite competitive and can be particularly competitive amongst those STEM type colleges and degrees like business. So it is definitely a path that requires an application that is going to be holistically reviewed. And again, it's a competitive process. I think that one of the things for students to consider right now that are thinking about the different options is, I think it's important to talk to whatever college you've committed to or you're going to commit to. I think it's important to talk to them about what challenges you're having that are preventing you from matriculating to that institution. So for example, if you thought about UT Austin, you committed to UT Austin, and now you're thinking, you know what, there's some changes to my situation. It might be better for me to do something else. Give us a call. Talk to the admissions office and say, you know, this is what's bugging me. This is what my concerns are. Oftentimes, a lot of it has to do with finances. And so we want to make sure that you get to the right place within financial aid to look at all your options. It's important to remember that this whole college experience, you know, for institutions like UT and A&M, it's a 4-year experience. So while this coming fall will be very different, likely in many different ways, our hope is that we eventually recover to some sense of normalcy, and that remainder of your 4-year experience at that institution is pretty robust and involves everything you would expect from that education. So it's a special circumstance, a special time right now. We want to work with you through that. If you decide to go the route of transferring, we definitely are open to transfer students, but it's a competitive process, just like the regular admissions process to UT Austin.
Thank you, Miguel. David, same question on transfers coming to A&M, either from ACC, Blinn, or other community colleges.
Well, I think Miguel did a very good job explaining most of it. We are also one of the more competitive programs. It's not just a Texas or local surrounding, but it's a national and international transfer programs at Texas A&M University. So if the numbers vary from year to year, the process doesn't change very much. Dates may change, but the process itself has not changed very much at all. I guess since I've been working in this area for quite a while, I have to develop some thoughts about things like this. And one of the things that I go into every recruiting year is that I tell students, anyone can go to Texas A&M University if that is where they have their heart and their desire to go, if they're willing to work for it. And I can't tell them that the easy pathway is just go through admissions, because now with over 50,000 applications a year, that is not an easy process to go through. We have lots of alternative programs. We have programs that you can go away for a semester or a year and come back with a guaranteed transfer from system schools. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to ACC or any other community college or junior college. Blinn College, of course, is probably the best known at A&M. It's been a feeder school really ever since I was connected with A&M. So for over 45 years, Blinn has been a feeder school to Texas A&M University. Austin Community College is a feeder school to Texas A&M University. So there are ways around it. There are some things you have to be careful of course. You have to make sure that, number one, the school has your major. Can't tell you how many times I've had students want to transfer to A&M, but they don't have their major. You've got to do your due diligence, your homework. And we provide all of that on our website, including a list of every major and what they would require of a transfer student to be considered for admissions at Texas A&M University. That's very handy to get, because that way you can go to the junior college or community college or even another four-year college, and you can plan out exactly what you're going to be taking with the plan of transferring to Texas A&M University. We love transfer students. We love to work with transfer students. We have an entire section that does just that, and they'll be glad to answer any questions for those kinds of things. That, I think, in a nutshell, is where our position is. If they want to come to Texas A&M University, we're going to do everything in our power to make that happen for them.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate that. And I'm seeing that we've got, I want to make sure that we've got 20 minutes or so here left, and that we get through some of these questions on the Q&A. Some of them we've responded to, so I just want to be, I'm going to go through them actually in order. So several of you have talked about potential for on-campus return, but a lot of uncertainty as to whether some of this is going to be virtual, some of it is going to be on campus. Is there any other information that you would like to share related to what format you guys are going to be pursuing for the fall or summer semester? And what we'll do is we'll do it in order again, starting with Melissa at ACC, and just want to make sure we're capturing this so we're clearing the questions in the queue.
Okay, thank you. We just had an email come out from Dr. Rhodes. I believe it was an internal email, but it doesn't mean that it's not shareable, because we all live in the community as well, right? We are planning at this time to come back in a limited fashion with face-to-face during our summer 2 session. That will be especially for things like some of our health sciences programs that need to be hands-on, And I believe they are starting with some of the courses that had to be terminated during the spring because they were unable to continue those courses in the face-to-face environment that they were in at the spring. So we're starting that way, sort of as a soft launch opening summer 2. The expectation at this time, and Dr. Rhodes spelled this out in the email, is that when things can be kept online, we will probably keep a lot of things online and reserve our space and our face-to-face for the social distancing that will be required for a lot of our hands-on work. We have a lot of workforce programs and that kind of thing that need that hands-on space. And if we're looking at keeping people socially distant, we want to be able to use that. So that's what we're anticipating at this time.
Annie, what about for Texas?
Summer 1, which starts in June, but that will be all online. And then once we hit summer 2 in July, that is expected to be back on campus face-to-face, as well as the fall semester. So we have currently heard nothing different.
Miguel.
Yeah, as of right now, our summer classes are all online, and it is our expectation to return to in-person classes in the fall. It may look slightly different than what we've become used to. If we are continuing to analyze all of the information, and if there, again, are any changes to that plan, we would let students know about that before the end of June.
Thank you. David?
Well, our summer programs are all going to be online. One of the things that we did do, we have a program called the Gateway Program, which is when a group of students come in. It's basically a provisional student program that happens the final summer session. That has been moved into the regular academic year. So that will be going on simultaneously with whatever other programs that we have. Of course, we have the engineering academies spaced throughout the state. Those things will just go along and as they will with the institutions that they are connected to. So for the engineering academies, students would want to call the community college or junior college to find out more about it. We are expecting, I think our visitor center is looking at being open and running as of August 1st. And things are going to be, our plan to go follow right along with that. All we have to do is get one little bug to work with us, and maybe we'll all be back in ideally. But that doesn't mean that everything will stay the same. I've heard some options of different formats of classrooms that may come about because of this. I'm not going to tell you because they probably would kill me if I told you. But there are some things. The university, as all universities, are always in a state of flux, always in a state of change. This is what you would call a monumental change. It is making us do things that we've never done before. It's making us think about things we never ever had to think about before. And so this is a growing opportunity for the university. And so far, I think what you've heard today, all of the groups here have done a wonderful job given the situation that we've been under.
Thank you, David. So I'm seeing several questions related to the TSI and the SAT, and I know that some of this was addressed on there a little earlier as you were discussing changes to the admissions or requirements, but I want to hit on it again because this is something for students who aren't TSI ready. Maybe they're ready in one subject but not another, but they're still interested in either coming to ACC or transferring into one of your colleges. What advice would you have for counselors, given that this is an uncertain time and given that they don't have them on campus and all of this is virtual now? What advice would you give counselors about students that are on the cusp of being TSI? And are you accepting anybody that isn't TSI compliant and then giving them a buffer to become so at each of your colleges? So we'll do again in order, starting with ACC.
Yes, such a good question. And again, this has been where some of our applicants have been stopped in the process because we haven't been able to identify their TSI status, which is just a transactional requirement as we're moving them through the onboarding. And gratefully, a lot of good heads have come together to help solve this concept of holistic advising, or, you know, overviews with multiple measures. And where the bottom line will be, if the student does not have TSI status to demonstrate, or any kind of multiple measures review that will help allow them to be waived at this time, we'll advise them into co-requisite models. And our co-requisite models are when the student may be taking a college level course and then simultaneously spend a few lab hours into the developmental education component as well. We've had great success in that over the years when we've done these co-requisite models that have really reduced the reliance that ACC has had on developmental education to move students into college readiness, into college level courses. We've moved them a lot faster. We're seeing success points, and our departments are very comfortable with the co-requisite model. So that is if the students do not have something to demonstrate that they can be waived in TSI at this time, or that they are TSI complete. And for those things, we really are looking at different options, like looking at GPAs. Have they completed, you know, two levels of math while in high school at least, and, you know, different things like that that can help to move them through. What we're still a little unsure on is if we will allow that to open up the full range of TSI eligibility into courses, or if we're going to limit it to, you know, a certain group of courses that we will allow students to register into. That's something that the coordinating board had talked about. And we're still working those details out, and hopefully we'll have them available to you. But barring all other things, we will move them into a co-requisite model, which we find very successful for students, and they get that college level credit at the same time.
Thank you, Melissa. Annie, what about for Texas State?
At this point, Texas State is still exploring other options. Our TSI website does have a link so that they can do remote testing as well. So we're still encouraging that. So they do have they are TSI complete. There is discussion going on about if that's not possible, if students aren't doing that, as to what they are going to do and how we're going to handle it, but nothing has been definitively decided past that.
Thank you, Annie. Dave, Miguel?
Yeah, I would just say that it's pretty much what the two former panelists said for UT Austin. And we have a website that lists the different requirements and then what happens if you don't meet the requirements and being enrolled in support courses. So it's the same thing.
Thank you. David, anything on the A&M side?
Well, basically what we've been saying is that if the students can't get the test scores before the sites are open again, they may actually need to reschedule their orientation program to a little bit later in the year, so that they can, when they are able to get the testing, that they've got it. We know that this is going on. We know that it's a problem. We know that everybody's working on it. But until there's some way of getting it, maybe there will be some kind of waiver. I don't know. That looks like there may be some things in there, but right now I just literally don't know. And that's the best I can tell you, because we have gotten absolutely no guidance from the coordinating board at all on this.
Thank you, David. And I'm scrolling down here. I'm also realizing we've got about 9 minutes. So I think we're going to transition maybe to some quick rapid fire. I see multiple questions on the TSI, and I think you guys have probably responded to that. What about, all right, so you know, who knows how long this crisis is going to go on. There's talk about a resurgence that might impact class of 2021. What advice would you give to students, or excuse me, to counselors who are advising students? What advice would you give them about ways in which they can strengthen their applications to your respective colleges. And we'll start with, we'll go back in order, and we'll start with Melissa. And Melissa, this one probably an easy one for you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're not selective. We're open admissions. We are here for your students. Again, to have them start well, we'd like them to think through what their goals are and start with the end in mind. It helps us serve them the best. But if they don't know, then we'll take them through some of the questions or the journey that they need to have ahead. So just, setting their minds to it, and two things that seem really smallish, I suppose, in terms of setting goals for life, but can make a huge impact are, one, tell your students to check their emails, because we still communicate a lot by email. And if they don't, then we often get questions say, I never got it. So checking email is pretty old fashioned, but they need to do it. And then the second is don't be afraid to ask questions. And that one is a hard one to get over. We think we're communicating everything we can to your students, and we're trying to over communicate. And of course, we may still be missing some things. So check your email and ask questions.
Thank you. Annie?
I would say that since everything is in such a state of flux, that our students and our counselors both are just going to have to keep on top of the changing environment. I think most of us have a COVID website. We've got an FAQ on our admissions page as well about things that are changing and what we're looking for. So most of the things we've already talked about are on that page, just all the different things. So be aware of those, work with your admissions counselors that each of us have as well, to know what to do, what's the most up-to-date thing. We also are waiting until August 1st to open the application for fall 21. So have your students, start doing that then before school starts, because we'll start reviewing them earlier this time.
Miguel?
Yeah, I think it's just about continuing to ask the questions. There's a lot of things that institutions are still trying to work out, trying to figure out about what the whole process is going to be like. And I think it's about, unfortunately becoming a little bit comfortable with the fact that many institutions are not going to have all the answers right away. And so, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask if you have some sort of difficulty. And so that's, for everybody to reach out and gather that information as they need.
Okay. Thank you, Miguel. David?
All righty, I'm going to cover a couple of things here. First off, because we're in the midst of this thing, one of the things that we're hearing, and I'll be honest with you, from my students, I've not heard it very much, but I know we're getting questions about it at the university, is whether a student can defer their semester and come in the spring semester rather than in the fall semester. I'm going to tell you that that's not the standard operating procedure at Texas A&M University. But because of the unique circumstances that we have here, a student can request a deferment based on COVID, whatever the issues are that may have arisen. It's not a yes, we're going to take it. It's more like an appeal than it is anything else. And it's not for somebody that says, oh, I just feel like I want to take a semester out. I just have to do that before I can. That's not what we're talking about. These are things that have impacted the student and the student's family, and it's more of an emergency nature than it is something else. Another question that popped up was a question about what do we do with students who pass-fail at Texas A&M University? Well, really, we handle them just like everybody else. The schools have to decide whether they're going to be ranked or whether they're going to unrank. If they unrank and do it by pass-fail, we will take it. As long as they've got the criteria to graduate from that school and it's on that final transcript, we're going to get them in. So don't let that be an issue. Don't think your school has to change to pass-fail. Don't think your school has to change back to ranking. Whatever it is that you're going to give us is what we will work for, and we'll be glad to do that. So what's my update? This is my commercial, I guess. Y'all come, y'all ask, and that's the best thing. You know, the greatest thing I can hear is when I heard someone talking and he said, that guy from A&M. And the counselor said, oh, you mean David from A&M. by God, that's the best recommendation that you can ever give a person in the United States, I guarantee you. And so all of us in our same position would feel just as great about that. We want you to use the services we have. I've been kind of away from things for 8 weeks now. I'm feeling a little bit lonely, but I'm making my life a little bit busier because of the time it is. But we need you. We want to help you. Let us know what we can do. There you go, Gilbert. How's that?
That was perfect, and actually an excellent segue, because you talked about two things that I want to have other panelists chime in on. One is a change in transcripts for pass-fail courses. What should counselors be advising students about that? And then maybe, since we're on short lightning round, immunization. So this is probably on the minds of a lot of folks, and I understand maybe there's still uncertainty. Give us as much as you know and as much as you can share with counselors on those two issues. And then as a heads up, I'll tell people we're going to try to get back on any questions we didn't answer. Shoot me a note, and we're going to try to get responses for you by email. So let's start again with Melissa.
Okay, pass at ACC, it's pass, no pass. This will not count toward GPA, it will count toward completion. So for students that are seeking to get into competitive programs, the letter grade may be of value. After May 22nd, when the grades are due, students are eligible to choose if they are taking a pass or no pass once they see their letter grade, and they have 7 days to make that selection so they can make a wise choice. We're encouraging them to talk with their destination college to be sure that that will not be impacting their transfer. For meningitis, we have a soft hold on that requirement at this time, because as long as the student is not in face-to-face, it's not required. However, we don't know when face-to-face is going and which students are going to be doing it, so we are still leaving it there and quietly moving students through the enrollment process without placing that meningitis hold. As soon as we get back to face-to-face, those holds are going to start coming back on. So we don't want to inform students that they don't have to have the meningitis shot at this time.
Thank you. Annie, what about for Texas State?
For us, like everyone else, we're looking at pass-fail as regular course grades, just like we're all going to have to deal with. If that's what you're giving them, that's what we're going to handle. We do consider a fail as a fail as opposed to a pass, which works just fine. So that is something to keep in mind. But for transfers coming in for high school students, both of those are specifically addressed on our website for our COVID page, as well as how it works for transfers coming in with those programs that do require specific grades. So we are working, we're well aware of the issue, and we're working with that. Regarding immunization, same as Melissa said, you've got to have it. For us, since summer 2 does start in July on campus, they are still going to have that hold, and it is on their account. Right now, our extension is through May 31st. I keep waiting for that to change and move forward, but we will see.
Thank you, Annie. Miguel?
Yes, for the pass-fail, like everyone else, we're analyzing those grades. If it's a fail, it's a fail. We want to do everything we can to make sure that students aren't penalized for any decision to go to pass-fail. As far as immunizations, we are requiring them as part of the registration for orientation. So they need to be done by the time people register for classes. However, if there's any difficulty in getting those, they can just contact UT and we'll work with them to go through with those requirements.
Thank you. David, anything to add in on immunization?
I think I mentioned earlier that we have moved the date back that they're due. Usually we want them by the time they're going to their prospective student orientation, but we've moved that back. They have to have it before they can come onto campus and get into housing and stuff like that. So it's been moved into August instead of, which would actually, most of them we'd be looking to try and get right now.
Perfect. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and thank you, David, for that response, and thank you all for joining us and for your input. I also want to make sure that we're capturing the questions that everybody asked, and we were trying to I was trying to lump things together. So if there was something that didn't specifically respond to a question that you submitted, please write me or write your guidance director and have them write me and say, hey, we want a little bit of clarification here. And I'm happy to communicate with the panelists to get that response to you. The Chamber also on our COVID resources page is curating the latest COVID-19 information from 40 of our top colleges in Central Texas, and obviously our friends from ACC, from UT, from Texas State, and A&M are on that. We're capturing that information. So we'll provide that as a link here when we update this webinar on our webpage. It is recorded, so you'll be able to go back to it. And thank you all. Thank you to our panelists and the guidance directors and counselors who joined us today. Your work is so important, and you guys are having a transformative effect on students with the guidance that you're providing. It's so critical, especially to first generation students and those that aren't familiar with our college admissions and financial aid process. So thank you sincerely. Thank you for all you do. And this will be posted, and you can always follow up with me, follow up with us on email. Thank you.